Now, before the pandemic, I never would have given this a thought, and probably never would have. But now that I get out and photograph all kinds of different locations, I really wish my Sony camera had this. But why doesn't it? Okay, so what I'm talking about is focus stacking. But I shoot Sony and I love it. But I really wish it had something that Nikon call focus shift. First of all though, if you don't know what focus stacking is, I'll quickly explain. When we take photographs, there are always areas that are in focus and areas that are out of focus. Sometimes it's an artistic choice, but sometimes even when we close down the aperture to something like f/16 when taking a landscape, there are still areas out of focus. However, you might want every single part of that picture to be in focus and tack sharp. This is when we use focus stacking. We take a number of photographs of the same scene and change the focus point each time. Then we blend the images together in software so that we end up with an image that is in focus from the foreground all the way through to the background. Now with my Sony, I have to manually change the focus point for each shot. And because to do this I have to get hands-on, it means there's potential for me to knock the camera, but also the time it takes to do it and how the light could change. Now I didn't know about this before my mate Doug came along and told me about it, but there's something Nikon have called focus shift that I believe is just in certain models. Anyway, as I understand it, focus shift means the camera will take all the shots at different focus points automatically. We can choose how many images to take, the time between each one, how far apart to have the focus points, and so on. And all these can be stored in a separate folder on the memory card for easy access. I really wish this was in my beloved Sony a7R IV, but it isn't. But surely that would just mean a firmware update. Huh? Anyway, however you take the images, here is how you can blend the images together to make sure you get a picture that is tack sharp and in focus from the front all the way through to the back. So in this example here, I have two photographs because I actually used two different focus points. I used one in this kind of area just here and then one further back. Now it might be really difficult looking at this on the screen to tell which one is which, but Photoshop can actually tell us that anyway. So long as we know what images were used, we can just put them into Photoshop and let it work its magic. Now the way we're going to do that is this. I've got the two images open in Photoshop, so all I'm going to do is get my move tool and click and drag up to the tab containing the other image, bring my cursor in, hold the shift key down and then let go so it drops it right on top. Now obviously I want these to be perfectly aligned, so let's just line them up. We can do that by making sure that they're both highlighted in the layer stack. Then go into the edit menu and choosing auto align layers. In the dialog that comes up, the default is set to auto in the projection method. Just leave it like that and then click OK. And just a few moments later, Photoshop will have lined those images up. Now that we've done that with both layers still highlighted in the layer stack, I'm then going to go to the edit menu and choose auto blend layers. Now in here we have the blend method. By default, it's probably set to panorama. For this technique, we need to just change it to say stack images and then click OK. Photoshop will now analyze both of these images to see what areas in focus and what areas are out of focus. It'll then apply masks to those layers so that only the sharp areas are visible. And you can see now over in the layer stack, we've got both layers with layer masks applied with white and black areas. On this layer here, we can see that the sharp areas were the white areas at the top and more to the foreground. And in this layer here, we can see it was definitely the church where the focus point was. So that's how we combine images together to ensure that we have a final picture that is sharp from the foreground all the way through to the distant background. But to give you an even clearer look at the result, let's just take a look at doing it on a completely different picture. So here's a photograph I took of a model aircraft to create this scene of paratroopers jumping out the back during World War II. Now the three images containing different focus points that I originally photographed were these three images just here. So I need to get these open into Photoshop as layers. So with one of them selected, I'll then hold down the Shift key, click on the other one on the far right hand side, so they're now all selected, and we'll go to Tools, Photoshop, Load Files into Photoshop Layers. Now once all those images have been sent from Bridge into Photoshop, one thing I do need to do is to make sure that they perfectly line up, because as you can see when I turn the layers off, there's just a little bit of movement. So what I'll do is make sure they're all highlighted in the layer stack. We'll go to Edit menu and we'll choose Auto Align Layers. And just as before, we'll just leave it in the default and click OK. So that happens very quickly. But let me just zoom in now so you can see exactly what we've got here. Now you can see just about that the uppermost layer, which is visible at the moment, contains the focus point on the front of the aircraft. So you can see that's nice and sharp and in focus. And that also, that depth of field means part of the front here is as well. If I turn that layer off, we can now see that the focus point changes, whereas it's in focus underneath this wing and also just a little bit underneath here. And then the final image, the third image, is where that tail is perfectly in focus. So for this image to work, the whole aircraft has got to be in focus. So this is where focus stacking really comes in handy. Right, okay, let's just zoom out just a little bit. In fact, I'll tell you what we could do. We could just crop this down just a little bit. Let's just clear that and let's just crop it so that we don't have all this other stuff around it. Let's go for something like that and press enter or return. And then over in the layer stack, we make sure that all of those layers are now highlighted. We go back to that edit menu and choose auto blend layers, making sure that we just use the stack images option, click OK and let Photoshop work its magic. There you go, looking over in the layer stack now, each of these individual layers has got a layer mask applied to it with white and black areas showing what's in focus and what's out of focus. But if I just zoom in now and see what we've got, this is with all of the layers turned on. We can see that we've got the actual front here of the aircraft nice and sharp and in focus. The underside is in focus. This wing here on the side is in focus, and also the tail is in focus as well. So the whole image is in focus from front to back. So Sony, please, can we, your loyal brand-loving photographers, have focus shift or whatever else you want to call it? Your focusing is insanely good. So you can do this. You know you can do this. Anyway, I guess that's enough said about that for now, but if you do have any thoughts on it, and did I get it right about Nikon, drop us a comment in the comments section. Give us a thumbs up if you've liked the video, and if you haven't already, click on that subscribe button, because as you know, that's just a great free way that you can support this channel. But yeah, for now, that's me. I'm done. I'll see you in the next video.